Welcome back to the garden.
Hello there.
And hello to you too. This is Garden Therapy. Today we're diving into a topic that's very near and dear to the hearts of gardeners, and that's, should I grow this plant again? I've come up with 3 key essential criteria in deciding that crucial factor. Number 1, is it productive? Number 2, fight on, how does it taste? And number 3, how well will the plant thrive in my specific climate? So let's jump right into it. Thanks again for joining us here on Garden Therapy. Before we get started, please don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and smash that bell for alerts. The first one is production. After all, one of the main reasons why we are gardeners is we want to enjoy the fruits of our labor, quite literally in this case. For me, assessing production involves looking at how bountiful was the harvest. Did those tomato plants overflow with ripe, juicy tomatoes? Did the zucchinis seem to multiply overnight? Now remember to keep track of your yields because productive plants are definitely keepers. Number 2, fight on, taste. After all, what's the point of growing something if it doesn't tantalize your taste buds? Whether it's the sweetness of a ripe strawberry or a vibrant flavor of freshly picked herbs, taste matters. Consider the quality of the produce you harvested. Did it live up to expectations? Did it bring that wow factor to the dishes you make? Share your thoughts on whether the taste was worth the effort. And for me, taste is huge. I highly recommend not growing anything you don't like to eat, outside of ornamentals, of course. If you're not going to eat it, your family's not going to eat it, the dog's not going to eat it, don't grow it. It's not worth it. And again, number 3, let's talk about vigor. Vigor of the plants for your specific climate. Now, gardening success often depends on choosing the right plants that thrive in your local environment. Take note of how well each plant is adapted to your climate conditions. Here in Northern California, it's heat. That's probably our biggest factor. And also how well it does the lack of rainwater. Because pretty much from May through October, we get very, very little rain. So does that plant tolerate those temperature fluctuations, those rainfall patterns we just talked about, sunlight levels? Evaluating these aspects can guide you in making smarter plant choices in future seasons. Remember, the individual that I interviewed, Fred Hoffman here in Northern California, and he does the Garden Basic podcast. He has the catchphrase that all gardening is local, and that's what this number 3 criteria about vigor is all about. I'm trying to pick things that will work here in Northern California compared to Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Colorado. I'm also trying to put plants in areas of my yard that will also meet that criteria. For instance, where I'm standing now in what I call the main kitchen garden, it gets a certain amount of sun. To my back is north and in front of me is south. I have to consider also how the sun comes up over the trees over there, how the house comes into play during certain times of year. And then I have the other garden where my salsa garden is, that faces south. And I would grow different plants there. Because it gets so much sun over there, I limit the amount of tomatoes I grow over there because I'm probably going to get sun scald. If I grow bigger peppers over there, I do have to make sure I protect them with some sunshade or make sure there's enough leafy growth to protect those peppers from sun scald. That's where the majority of my sun scald occurs. So keep all that in mind. All gardening is local, not only city to city, state to state, country to country, but also different areas of your yard. A little history on my garden plan for this season. I wanted to focus on that climate specifically. I wanted to try to find plants, specifically tomatoes and peppers, that could handle the heat. I want to make sure they can still set flowers in the 90-degree range. I want to make sure they can still produce the tomatoes and get pollinated and continue to grow in that heat. I also wanted to look at taste. Taste was huge for me, and that also became a big part of my consideration with my history, which is why these are part of my 3 criteria. And of course, the production piece through the heat of the weather and all of that. So one of the things I did look at were AAS winners. Those are All-American Selection winners. These are seeds and plants that go all over the country in different climates with different gardeners, and they're judged basically on those 3 criteria. Does it produce? Does it taste well? And how's the vigor of the plant based on all that environment? And the ones that do it across the board with many environments get that winning seal. And I did focus on getting a few plants that are AAS winners, and I'll continue to look for those AAS winners as we move forward. So when looking for seeds and looking for plants, trying to find an AAS winner is a good first step. Let me start with everybody's favorite tomatoes. Now, obviously, I grew 17 different variety of tomatoes and probably had about 29 to 30 plants.
I think you're nuts.
I'm not going to go over every single one of those tomatoes, so don't worry. I'm just going to hit on a few key ones that I thought were really surprising in a good way, and ones that I wouldn't recommend growing. So number one, let's start on the positive side. Apple yellow. The apple yellow is this little grape/cherry tomato, and as you can see, it looks just like a little yellow apple. The plant is, based on our 3 criteria, super vigorous in this area. It is over 8 feet tall. I've had to do the lower and lean and lower it down at least twice so far. It's still, I'm looking up at it right now off camera, it's still producing flowers. It's still setting new fruit. Since July 1st, we've had 4 or 5 stents of 100 degrees for 2 to 4 days, and it's still producing. So that part is outstanding. Obviously, the production was good, the vigor is good. And so how does this taste? I wasn't thrilled with it at first. As it got hotter, I felt like it sweetened this tomato. Mid-July, I turned the corner on this. It is super sweet, hardly any acidity after bite, and I just love this tomato. So super sweet. I was really high on this tomato. So am I going to grow this tomato next year? Yes. Also, one key to remember here, this is also an AAS winner, which is why I ended up planting it in my garden in the first place. Sticking with the positive side of the tomatoes, I experimented with a bunch of dwarf tomato plants this year, and some were from San Diego Seed Company and some were from Victory Seed Company. So the dwarf tomato project is pretty cool. They make these little dwarf tomatoes, and it's the plants. The plants really only get to about 4 feet tall, but they get really bushy, so keep that in mind. You definitely want to give them a little bit of space between plants. I packed some in the salsa bed, and they were just too close, and I think that hampered some of the production there. One of the standouts there was the Uluru Okra, which is the one you see behind me, which is still growing. Now, this is not a determinate tomato. I thought it was. It's an indeterminate, and it's still growing super tall and high. But the thing I really like about it is this color. The flavor is great as well, but it's really appealing to the eyes as well as the palate. It's this nice orange terracotta color. Great flavor. I'm definitely going to grow that one next year. 2 more tomatoes I have on my list that I'm definitely going to grow next year that I want to tell you about. Number 1 is right here. This is the Moreno. The first time I ever grew it. The seeds, if you do start from seed, they're twice as expensive as normal seeds, but I think this one is pretty much well worth it. Again, great production, great flavor, great vigor in my environment. It's not growing, actually it is growing pretty tall. It's definitely at the 6-7 foot mark right now, but the flavor is great, and it's still producing, it's still setting fruit, and it's still flowering. So those are huge pluses for me in regards to this tomato. But one thing to keep in mind, it does require 12 hours of sun. So if you do plant it, make sure you get at least 12 hours of sun, or you're not going to get a lot of fruit production at all. On the negative side is its sister tomato, the Moreno. So the Marbone was great, the Moreno not so much. Hardly produced. When it did, they were relatively off and small. So again, required about 12 hours of sun. I'm not sure if just the exact location of where it was within this bed didn't work out for it, but I won't grow it. I won't waste my time with it, and I won't grow it again. On the dwarf tomato side, I got a golden gypsy tomato. The yellow color is beautiful and all of that, and the flavor was really good. The production though wasn't very good at all, and only got about 2 or 3 of those tomatoes. So I'm not going to plant the golden gypsy again next year. Honorable mentions that are some heirlooms, which tend not to do all that great in my area just because of the heat. But the gin fizz I had over here, really nice, really pretty, orange, yellowish stripes. It goes all the way through and multicolored inside of the tomato as well. It had really good flavor, looked great sliced on toast, on bagels. So I'm definitely going to grow that one. But on the other heirloom side is the pineapple. Now the pineapple was really cool. It's supposed to get up to 2 pounds. I never got one that big. I think the biggest one I got was 15 ounces, so just under 1 pound. But I only got about 2 or 3 of them. The taste was out of this world, but production-wise and taking up the room, I'd rather try something new. I am developing a little bit of a plan for next season.
It's barely a concept.
Thanks for that, Gamora. I'll keep that in mind.
Oh.
But I will have a more solid plan as things go on. But I'm definitely going to pull that one out of the garden and not grow grow it again. The tomato I want to mention is the Galahad. That was another AAS winner, and that's what kind of brought it to my attention. Not only is it tolerant up to about 94 degrees, it actually is super productive. It is a determinant. It doesn't get very high, again, maybe 4 feet tall. It flushed a lot of fruit at once. Really nice, your perfectly round red tomatoes, and it seems to be tolerating the heat. And even though it's a determinant tomato, as I look at it here off camera, there are a lot of flowers. I'm expecting some more fruit on this one. You know, I pretty much have probably till Halloween to get those to ripen. The Galahad, I definitely recommend doing that. I got those from Johnny's Seeds. So let's move on to peppers. As far as peppers go, you know, you got your traditional bell peppers. This is a sunrise pepper. Tastes really good. I can't complain about that. The vigor is good. It's growing well and all of that, but it's not very productive. I do want to try some other peppers next year, and I want to make some room. So I think I'm going to 86 all types of bell peppers. This is a sunrise. I also have, I think it's called an X3R, which doesn't have a real name yet from Johnny's, which makes a red pepper, which is pretty tasty as well. But they're just not very productive, and it takes a long time for these to ripen. So I'm going to 86 the bell peppers next year. What I am going to grow a lot more of are these mini peppers. This is a red lunchbox bell pepper, this is an orange, and this is a yellow, and they grow great. They produce like crazy. You can see the sizes vary a little bit, but some are fairly good in size. They ripen really fast. So if you're in an area that's a little bit colder, you know, maybe like a zone 5 or lower, this might be a good option for you, where you can get some colorful and flavorful peppers and don't have to eat green ones all the time. But you can eat these green as well as wait for them to ripen, but just wonderful. And I'm going to definitely keep growing these snacking peppers, as well as I'm going to try a couple of other new snacking peppers too, because I'm so enthralled with these peppers. So as far as a pepper goes of substantial size, you know, I'm sticking with the bullhorn peppers. I'll love this one. This is a Carmen. Its brother plant, the Escamillo, is a yellow bullhorn. I'm actually going to add an orange bullhorn to the family next year. And again, these guys are really great peppers. Excited for these next year. I've been loving them this year. Can't make a video and mention peppers without mentioning shishito peppers. Love these things. They've been great. You know, again, I have about 11 plants, which is way more than I need for me and my family. I'll probably cut that down in half to make room for a few more, you know, snacking peppers, as well as some of the newer ones I want to bring in. But there was a shishito plant called the Shamai that was productive. It tasted great. It actually hit all 3 criteria, super vigorous. But the one thing it was supposed to be was spicy. It's not spicy. It's supposed to be a spicy version of the shishito. You know, I couldn't tell the difference. I even mixed them in with the regular shishito peppers, and 1 out of every 10 shishitos is supposed to be spicy. And I added dozens into harvests and rarely got a spicy one this year. So the Shamai pepper, I'm going to eliminate that one and make room for some other peppers. So staying in the same family as tomatoes and peppers, let's talk tomatillo. I've never grown a tomatillo until this year, called Chupon de Malinalco now. And it's this nice husk tomato with this beautiful yellow tomatillo in it. And this is a medium-sized one, and you can see how large it is. Some get you know, much bigger. It makes unbelievable salsa. And rare for a tomatillo, you can eat this raw right off the plant. And if you're familiar with what a ground cherry is, the flavor is relatively similar, but this one is, you know, it's sweet, it's fruity, and it's tropical, and it turns your, you know, your salsa amarillo, you know, goes along great with this one.
How does it feel to be a superstar?
So I'm definitely going to grow this one again, and I think it's going to be a mainstay and staple in my garden. Just make sure if you plant this, you do at least 2 plants, because it requires 2 plants to pollinate and get a fruit. 2 Chupon de Malinalcos, make sure you have room for them. It's outstanding. I highly recommend it. So eggplant. I've never been a really big fan of eggplant, probably because it was in the store. You know, I found the skin unappealing. It was bitter. But since I started growing it myself, I love eggplant. This year I grew a listata and a little tiny guy here called the fairy tale. The listata wasn't very productive. It could have been location of where I put it. So it could have been the gardener's fault, but I'm going to eliminate the listata next year and not grow that one. But the listata basically just looks like a much bigger version of this one. Now this is a fairy tale. I like to say it's small, but its flavor is mighty. 2 to 4 inches in size, super sweet, never bitter. I've even probably picked them maybe 2 weeks later than I should have. Big seeds, no bitterness whatsoever. So very, very good. Highly recommend this fairy tale. It's going to be in my garden for quite some time. Quick about cucumbers. Again, another AAS winner right behind me here is called the Diva cucumber. Because of circumstances of when I had to plant things, I lost my first round of Diva cucumbers. So a little bit late in coming up. So the production isn't great. Flavor's wonderful. The cucumbers are really smooth. There's no spines on it. Zero bitterness. Very crispy. Great moisture content. Love it. The cucumber is the Conrtol cucumber. Both the cool thing about the Diva and the Conrtol cucumber is that they're parthenocarpic. So you can imagine how productive they are. The Conrtol is spiny. It does have the little bumps on it and a little pokey, but it's not off-putting at all as far as the flavor goes. Highly recommend both. But I'm going to make a choice because I want to add a Japanese long cucumber to the group called the Nunagi. So I'm going to eliminate one of those 2 cucumbers. I don't want 3 different types of cucumber plants like that. It's just only so many you can eat and preserve. So I'm probably going to eliminate the Conrtol. I've grown it 2 years in a row. This was my 3rd year. So I'm probably going to eliminate that one and then I'll replace it with the Unagi. The other cucumber I do grow is the Armenian striped. First time I'm growing that one this year. I grew the Armenian white last year, but this one, it really tolerates the heat. It's not super productive, at least the one I have. Again, I think it's because of my planting timing on this one. I do have a real nice one on the vine right now. It's about 2 feet long and it's probably about 70% cucumber flavor and about 30% melon flavor. And technically it is a melon, but it's a really cool plant. If you want to try something different, you can do everything with it that you do with a normal cucumber. And so I would highly recommend it if you want to try something different. So let's talk summer squash and summer zucchini. So I grew 2 zucchini plants. One's called the Safari and one was called the Golden Glory. Beautifully striped zucchini. The golden one was beautiful colors. They looked great together. They tasted wonderful, even raw. I've never had zucchini that tasted that good raw and had a pretty low moisture content as well. Productivity though wasn't great. I've really struggled with zucchini. I like a zucchini to a weed. You put seeds in the ground and you have more zucchini than you know what to do with. That has not been my problem the last couple of years for some reason or another. I'm probably going to take a break from zucchini. Maybe my garden just needs a breathe. But what I am going to keep growing, and it's the first time I grew it this year, is the center cut squash. This can easily replace your zucchini. It can be a winter squash if you let it get big enough and leave it on the vine long enough. But if you pick it young and little like this, it tastes amazing. There's no seeds at all in the neck. And then down here is where all the seeds are, but they're very small. And I just chopped this up and put it in dishes. I actually had it for lunch today. It's wonderful. I really love it. It's very productive. I have it on the arch trellises over here that I get to walk through when I enter my garden, and they are super vigorous. They're growing in the heat, putting on flowers, flushing fruits. So love it, and I'm definitely going to be growing that next year. Another squash that I'm definitely going to grow and always has a place in my garden is a Kukuzi squash. I made a video with Jurassic Park music because it gets so big. It's very similar in size to what that Armenian cucumber gets, and it gets up to 3 feet long. It's huge, but it's very flavorful. Again, that's another one. If you leave it on the vine and let it harden, it can become a winter squash. But I eat it as a summer squash. I chop it up, I put mozzarella in it, some Italian sausage, and I kind of make a lasagna out of it. It's really good, really flavorful, and really fun. As far as squashes, I'm definitely not going to grow with the zucchini or winter squashes. I kind of had it up to here with winter squashes. You plant a vine, it takes up a lot of room. I do grow vertically, so I'm not losing a lot of garden space, but you just get so little fruit. I have 2 types of kombuchas. One is over there, and it makes a nice little tiny pumpkin that's dark and light green striped. And then I have another one that makes a little grayish pumpkin on the other side of the house, and that has 2 on it as well. So I have like 4 vines, 4 fruits. Not going to grow those kombuchas again next year. The other one is spaghetti squash, and it pains me to say it. It's a big favorite of my wife. I love it. We love making dishes with it. But again, planted a few vines, got 3 plants or 3 fruit from those plants, and they're pretty small.
No. Wait.
So I'm going to take a break from the spaghetti squash. If you think about those criteria for a second, the production, the taste, the vigor, one thing that just comes to mind is some of the previous videos that I've done, control what you can control, experience joy. Those specifically come to mind, as well as change, really. It's okay and it's hard sometimes to change something you've always grown, and even though it hasn't been all that productive like the spaghetti squash and the winter squash, which I am not growing at all, that's going to be a little bit painful, but something I need to go through it so I can grow and develop a little bit better and put the plants in that give me more joy. I don't have a lot of control in the garden as much as I like to think I do. I can't control the weather, can't control temperature, rainfall, all that stuff. I can't control the pests, really. I can just make an environment to make it harder for those pests to live. So that's what I want to do and move forward with the control piece, is focus on buying plants and or buying seeds, growing plants that will be successful in my climate, with the pest pressure that I experience, with the weather that I experience. So all of those things are kind of coming together a little bit in this video. Keep that in mind. If you haven't seen those videos before, I'll link a couple at the end of the video. So there you go. 3 key criteria to consider when deciding to grow certain plants in your garden. Again, production, taste, phyton, and how well it grows in your specific climate. So as you wrap up your gardening season, take a moment to reflect on each plant's performance based on these key factors. Your experience can be a valuable guide for your next planting season. So thank you for tuning in. If you liked what you saw, please feel free to share. Please click on one of these videos next if you haven't seen them already.